said, I don't want to do that. And so I quit and I said, this isn't what I want. And I quit on my dream, right? And after that, quitting became so painful that I never wanted to quit again.
Welcome to Veteran Led. I am your guest host, Brandon Axmit, joined by your normal host, which is John Barry. John joining us as he has recently written a book that will be released on Veterans Day, and he's been your host for the past nearly 100 episodes of the podcast. So, John, first off, how are you feeling being on the other side of the podcast, not in the host, but in the guest role, as we're about to talk about your book?
I think for anyone that starts anything like the podcast, the first few episodes were bad. And you get better, but you have to be willing to suck. And that is the genesis of the book. I started the book 3 years ago. It was bad. I didn't like it. We rewrote it and rewrote it. I worked with all sorts of different editors and ghostwriters and all these different people, and I didn't like the product. So I just scrapped the whole thing, started over, rewrote it, found some great editors, and here we are today.
And I think a lot of people who maybe don't know you closely, they see you on the billboards, the lawyer, the veteran who served for 2 decades, but you're a pretty interesting person. And I think that speaks to your personality when you say, hey, I'm going to write a book about my experiences in the military and how that translates to success in business. So do you remember when that moment was where it's like, I think I'll write a book?
Well, it was 3 years ago, and I remember thinking I needed to capture the leadership lessons to develop a leadership manual for Barry Law. So I was excited to do it. And as I started to write the book, it morphed into several different things. And at one point, I was like, do I really want to do this? Because we have a great 8-figure business, right? But there are 9-figure businesses. There are billion-dollar businesses. Our business is not that significant. And my military experience, while it was important to my development, I have a lot of friends who served a lot more, did a lot more exciting things. And I thought, is this the book I write? And luckily through JP Morgan Chase's CEO Circle program through Bunker Labs, I met with a guy, a Special Forces Sergeant Major, and he's like, man, you've got more experiences than most people that write books. He's like, write it. And so through that cohort, that group, they inspired me to publish it and to move forward with it. But initially, this was just going to be an internal document, our leadership manual. But the more people I talked to, they said, John, would you coach me? Do you coach on this stuff? And I thought, man, I've wasted so much money on coaches that were absolutely worthless. Like, I don't want to be in that position. Plus, I owe it to my team to be fully present, to give my energy and my coaching to my senior executives, to my best lawyers, to make my best people even better. So I didn't want to coach people, but I wanted to get the lessons out there. When I started sharing those lessons with some of my friends who were veterans and high performers, we found that we had a lot in common, and a lot of those lessons really resonated with them. And the more I shared those lessons, which were mostly failures, the more they would share their failures. And we found that when you hang out with winners, it's okay to talk about your losses and to talk about what you learn, and then to climb on the shoulders of those giants and get to the next level.
You mentioned to it the process about 3 years, starting, stopping, not sure if you should move forward. I believe there's around 20 chapters in the book. What is that process like as you're going through that editing process of determining what's the most significant and what needs to be in the book?
Well, I mean, to give you the big picture, right? I'm trying cases. I'm running a law firm. I've got a family. And I'm thinking, this just isn't a high priority. There's not a high ROI on writing books. And so I didn't want to take the time to do it. But it kept coming back, and it kept coming back to me in a way that, like, I'm quitting this project. And I think back to the first time I ever quit anything, which was when I was playing football at College of William & Mary. Now, that was my dream, to play college football, and I worked my ass off to get there. I walked on. I wasn't good enough to start. I got injured my second year, and I was told that I would have to sit out a year. And I thought about sitting out a year, and back then you'd hold the coach's cord. The coaches have these cords there on the sidelines. I said, I don't want to do that. And so I quit, and I said, this isn't what I want. And I quit on my dream, right? And after that, quitting became so painful that I never wanted to quit again. So, as you learn in the book, I failed out my first time I went through Ranger School, and I got injured, and it took me 6 months to recover. But there was no question I was going back, because that pain of quitting is just so intense. So I was not going to let some book, right? This thing, like this, I'm not going to let that beat me, right? Like, I'm not going to let this book beat me. So I decided I would write the book, and it would be, for some people, a gift, and for some people, probably a great way to relax and maybe even laugh with me or laugh at me.
Well, and you hit on so many personal experiences too. That the one about quitting you just shared, I think one that a lot of people could use in everyday life. But is there a specific chapter or topic when you look back at the book and you say that's the one that I'm most proud of? That is what epitomizes me to my core as I shared that information in the book.
Nothing specific, but when I talk about the Grim Reapers, Alpha Company, 1-5 Cav, 1st Cavalry Division, that was my first platoon. And I can remember as a platoon leader showing up and being so proud to be part of that organization. Most of my non-commissioned officers were combat veterans from Desert Storm, and they showed up every day fired up with, cup of coffee in hand, getting ready to do PT. And I never cared whether I was going to let my company commander down, or whether I was going to get a bad OER. What I cared about was letting down those non-commissioned officers who invested their time in training me, but also those junior soldiers who were looking up to me to say, this is what an officer is. So, for me, that was really, I think, when I talk about those moments in the book, those take me back to where I want to go. As I look at my entire legal career, my entire business career, where I seek to go back every single time is to be that second lieutenant showing up at that new infantry unit and being part of that championship team where everybody cared about the success of the team and we knew that our mission mattered.
Well, if you haven't picked up on it yet, John is a passionate, mission-based person. And I wanted to ask you about your mission-focused leadership within the book. How does that approach apply to Barry Law within the business as well when you take that from the military?
Well, I took the shortcut. I hire veterans. Veterans come with leadership ability, proven leadership ability when you hire them. So I knew that brand is the foundation for a culture. And so if I could build a brand based on the military experience, based on what every veteran knows, then I could build the culture I wanted on top of that. And so it starts off with that simple brand understanding of the veteran, America's greatest resource. And then on top of that, we build by building a leadership team with, at one point, my general counsel was a former Marine infantry guy who did the funded law program. My CIO is a former Army colonel. Right now, our chief operating officer was a major general in the Air Force, fighter pilot. And so we've taken all that leadership together, along with some phenomenal attorneys, and built something great. And built something where everybody strives for excellence, where we hold a high standard and we try to raise it even higher. And we've got the right team, the right culture, and it is a blessing every day to be able to serve with my team members.
And I think one of those examples you talked about in your book, carrying over the military leadership to here in Barry Law, the scoreboards, accountability. Can you give it some insight which is talked about in the book about how that is translated to further success within your business?
So anybody that's served in the military knows about go, no go. They know about the time when you're challenged and you have to qualify, you have to meet a standard. And if you don't meet that standard, then you're a failure and you usually retrain until you achieve the standard. Right. And so for me, it was all about setting high standards and achieving them. And those scoreboards that we have let people know what the score is. I cannot imagine going through life day after day and not knowing whether I made a difference, whether that day I won or lost. And look, some days I lose. Some days the organization will be better off if I didn't show up. And I get that. But when we have a scoreboard that is public facing, what I mean public facing, not client facing, but back in the areas of the office, the 80-inch screens that are flashing the top metrics, the leaderboards, people know who's number one. And winners, they got to know whether they're number one. And they can't stand it when they're not. And so what happens is that becomes infectious. The right people stay and they want to be at the top of the leaderboard, and the wrong people who are not competitive don't want to be here. And that's okay, right? This isn't for everyone. But the way I see it is, when I was a commander, I was told, my second deployment as a company commander, you're charged with protecting America's sons and daughters. As a business leader, we are responsible for America's sons and daughters to give them a bigger, better future. And if we fail and they don't achieve their objectives, or worse, they can't feed their families because we as the leader failed, that's on us. So those leaderboards matter because people need to know whether they're winning or losing. And if they're losing, it shouldn't be a surprise at the end of the quarter or the end of the year when you say you're not performing. In the military, we knew whether we passed the physical fitness test. We knew whether we passed land nav. We knew whether we had hit the target or whether we had missed. And for me, it's just cruel not to do that. I can't imagine being in an environment or an organization where that doesn't exist. People talk about toxic leadership all the time. Oh, it's so toxic. It's so hard. Let me tell you something. For me, toxic leadership is being around someone who is so passive, who doesn't care about the team enough to hold people to the standard. To me, that's toxic leadership.
And I think that's very interesting you hit on that, the whole being offended in today's society. And you talk about in the book that really you caring enough to hold a person to a certain standard is actually a form of tough love, because if you didn't, what's it matter if you're just allowing someone to fail? And I think that's something that a lot of people need to maybe have a better understanding and grasp of.
Yeah, look, if you want to take care of people, I learned this, you don't coddle soldiers. You challenge them. If you really want to take care of them, that's how you take care of them. You challenge them. You don't coddle them. You don't put your arm around them. You don't have sleeping rooms. You take them to the higher level that you know that they can achieve, and they're not there yet. And you know you can get there. And as a leader, that is the most rewarding thing. It's just like watching your son score a touchdown or your daughter win the spelling bee or whatever it is. Seeing that leader develop and seeing that potential morph into what you knew it could be, there is nothing greater. So when I look at, yes, we are hard. We push our team to be the best, and we hire people who are either the best or have the potential to be the best. And once again, the best in our organization, right? That believe in the metrics, because we've hired a lot of people that give lip service to it. It's kind of like the people that almost joined the military, right? Oh, I was going to join the military, and it's kind of, well, we really love this whole concept, but I actually don't want to do all these things. I don't like the metrics. I don't like that I'm not on the leaderboard. Oh, you don't not like that you're on the leaderboard? Then why don't you do the things that you need to do to be on that leaderboard? And, not a lot of people will do it.
We haven't even hit on this yet on the book, but sort of the motto throughout is survive, thrive, and then dominate. Walk us through the process of first surviving, then thriving, which allows you to then dominate.
So I took that from the Army training methodology: crawl, walk, run. Okay. And in life, we need to survive, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we're not able to have food, water, shelter, and our basic needs aren't met, then it's really hard to thrive, to get really good, right? And so I always say that you survive as an individual, right? You thrive as a team, a well-functioning team, and you dominate as an organization. And that's the one thing that, I really got some great insights about in the business world. I always thought big army was so dumb. I hated big army. Everything was slow. It's a big bureaucracy. And of course, bureaucracies hate heroism, right? I mean, they love it in the battlefield, but not when you're in garrison. And so I really did not, I just couldn't wrap my brain around that. And, for me, domination as a large organization, you look at the United States military, the most powerful military in the history of the world. How is it so dominant, right? And it's really, even though it's big, it's agile. And there's just brilliant things. And so I started picking this stuff apart, realizing this is amazing. And I go back to 2016 when I went to go visit my friend Daniel Alaric, the founder of Grunt Style. And we were sitting down over lunch, and he's telling me, and first of all, he was very generous at the time. He said, "I'd love to meet you. I have a business. I'd love to talk." He said, "Yeah, come on down. I'm happy to talk to you." And so Daniel and I are sitting there. I'm like, "Well, so how do you do this?" And we were talking about HR issues. He's like, "Oh, well, I use the Army counseling form." And Daniel, a former drill sergeant, was basically doing everything by the numbers. All the forms, everything that he had learned in the military, all the thought processes, he had incorporated into his company at the time, Grunt Style. And I thought, wow, that's ingenious. And the more I thought about that, the more I realized that it works and how brilliant our military is, even though it is a large bureaucratic organization.
Looking at your leadership style too, and having an understanding from reading this book, I think something that's refreshing about it is, and you said it here today, you're not afraid to admit when you're wrong. And you even say in the book, hey, this may not have all of the answers, but this is what I know that this information will have and will provide for you. So when you look at the military experience that led you to develop this sort of philosophy and understanding, how has that served you most throughout your career?
Well, I think for all of us veterans, our military experience is something that you take the good, you leave the bad. It wasn't all great. We've all been through CIF, the Central Issue Facility, where you wait in line to get your gear. Half of it you're never going to use, and then you got to clean it and turn it back in. They won't accept it. I mean, there's things like that just drive you crazy. But it's the people, the leaders, the mentors, the dog-faced soldiers, the people that counted on you and the people that you counted on. I mean, that's where I draw my energy from. Just those experiences were so amazing. It's not even things that I can really, events that happened or things that I can describe. It's the feeling I get when I see, some of those old friends that I haven't seen for 20 years, and it's exactly the same. And it's just that closeness, that camaraderie, that feeling that this is my tribe, that these are my people and I'm one of them. And I'm so proud to be a part of this organization. I'm very proud to be a veteran. Probably more proud to be a veteran than I was when I was in the military, where we were all kind of, we all complain. And if a soldier's not complaining, something's wrong. But getting out and then looking back and being able to see the amazing lessons that I learned, the amazing people I served with, and then going into the civilian world and realizing how much better veterans are than most civilians.
As you were answering that question, I had a thought for you too. Those of you considering joining the military today, with your understanding of where it's at and what's going on a global scale, what advice would you give someone considering enlisting?
Whether you're going to enlist or you want to become an officer, do it. Look, the military will always go through changes, and we know that the pendulum swings back and forth with budgets and certain behavioral traits, and sometimes the military overcorrects. But it's the military that you make it. And you get the opportunity to serve your country, to raise your hand and swear that solemn oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and to give back, to do something that gives your life meaning. Who would give up that opportunity? And so for me, I see it as a great opportunity, a great blessing. You see the memes that say, must be nice to get veterans disability benefits. And the guy says, yeah, that recruiting office was open to everyone. And so the benefits are great, and the educational benefits, phenomenal. But I think of my best experiences, it was meeting with the leaders. Now, some of it was traveling, while on leave, being young and being able to travel and have some of those great experiences. But what it comes down to is I had the opportunity to serve, and I got to serve my country, and I got to meet other people who had the same like-minded people who also wanted to serve, to give back, who wanted to have meaning in their lives, and who wanted to be the best because they knew that in combat, second place is death. And the translation to running a law firm is second place in a jury trial is a loss. So we don't accept second place trophies here. Yeah, I stole that from We Were Soldiers Once and Young, I know. But second place trophies don't matter, because if a client comes to us, and I don't care whether it's a veteran who's been denied VA disability benefits and now they're homeless or they're worried about bankruptcy, or it's someone who's been in a huge accident and the insurance company won't pay, or someone's been falsely accused of a crime, they come to us and say, please help me. And I noticed this when I came off active duty and former soldiers were veterans that I served with were coming back to me. And because I was their commander or their platoon leader, I had a position of authority, and they thought that I still knew everything. Look, I didn't know anything back then. I remember I'm in my early 20s and I got a guy in his 30s asking me whether he should get a divorce. Hey, sir, should I get a divorce? I don't know. I didn't even know how to date, really. I mean, but that's the thing, is when you're in a leadership position, you have a duty to take care of your team, and it never goes away. And people that see you in that position of authority will come back to you time and time again. So as a lawyer, I saw the great opportunity to represent veterans, because veterans are the best clients. They understand chain of command, they understand teamwork, and they understand trust. Right? Hey, I came to you, I'm going to trust you with this. And they understand that's a burden to me. If you come to me and say, this is an important case, everything in my life depends on it, John, will you take this case? It's heavy. It is heavy, and you feel it in your soul. But that's the same feeling you have when you're in charge of soldiers. It's that heavy feeling, that glorious burden of command, where you know that the decisions you make will affect someone's life forever.
When you talk about affecting people's lives, this book, first off, for veterans, what do you hope a veteran who reads this book will take away?
I hope that every veteran who reads this book and is like, yeah, I knew that. I hope what they take away is we already know everything in this book. We already know these leadership lessons. We learn them. We live them. We just need to apply them.
Flip side, non-veterans, when they read this book, what can they take away?
Don't be stupid. Hire veterans. Your company is failing right now because you didn't hire veterans. You didn't hire people who have the intestinal fortitude to complete the mission. You didn't hire people who care enough about the team to go the extra mile to make them successful. So if you read the book and you're not a veteran, you might want to think about some of these principles, because every veteran knows these principles and knows how to apply them.
John, your favorite part, we're getting to the after action review. And this one I took directly from your book. I believe it was the hip pocket training chapter, but this is the quote you put in there. You only live one life. You have one opportunity to become the person you want to be, and you won't become that person unless you deliberately and relentlessly train to become that person. Just curious, the genesis from that and how you came to that understanding, because I think that really does speak a lot to what we're seeing here on this episode today and the personality and the energy that you bring each and every day.
Well, first of all, I stole that quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson and made it worse, right? Made it longer and less concise and precise. But look, that is God's gift to man. Is that we are on this earth with the opportunity to do great things, but we get to decide who we become. We don't get to decide what happens to us, but we always get to decide who we become. And we have to be intentional about it, from how we treat our bodies, to how we treat our families, to how we treat our coworkers, to how we treat our soldiers, to how we defeat our enemies. We decide.
Book is coming out, Veterans Day, November 11th. I'm sure there's a long list. Anyone at top of mind who you'd like to thank?
First of all, I'd like to thank my father who made all this possible. And he's mentioned throughout the book, a phenomenal leader and lawyer, right? He was the one that broke the mold, where a lot of times lawyers are technicians, they're not leaders. He was both a lawyer and a leader, had his famous case known as the Green Beret Affair, Vietnam, where he subpoenaed sitting president Richard Nixon in an effort to deal with in an effort to successfully defend his clients who are members of the 5th Special Forces and who are heroes to him. And as we get older, I learned this from another veteran, his name is Dan Sullivan. As we get older, we get to choose who we will be a hero to. And so as I think about that quote, it's really deciding who our heroes are and how we can be heroes to them and how we can live the life that we choose to live.
Best lesson you learned and perhaps the most personal growth you've seen throughout this process?
It's cliche, but never quit. Never quit. I didn't want to, I got bored with the book. I didn't want to do the book, but I knew that it could help some people. Not everybody, and some people will hate it. And look, for some people, this will make a great place to put your coffee or your bourbon, and it'll stay there. But that's really, in the end, we all fail. We all find reasons to not do something, right? And everything looks like failing until it's not. And so, as I wrote the book, and I still don't, there's still parts that I would improve upon if I could take 5 years or 10 years. But at some point, you have to pull the trigger. At some point, you have to say, I have the momentum. I've written this book. I'm going to share it with the world. And you know what? Some people may not like it. They may come back and say bad things. But I don't make my decisions based on the opinions of other people. I make my decisions based on the people that I want to be a hero to. And that is why the book is here. And that's why it's done. Never quit.
Never quitting, the best lesson you learned. What was the hardest lesson you learned?
Keep your mouth shut. The hardest lesson is feedback is a gift. It took me till I was about 40 years old because my ego got in the way. I thought I was so smart. And I can remember when I went from being a line infantry platoon leader, my next job was support platoon leader. And the Bravo company commander came up to me and said, John, I just want you to know, you're going to screw things up here because you know nothing about logistics. And he was right. But I'm like, oh, no, I'm not going to screw up. And it wasn't until we're at the National Training Center and I'm on a mission running log pack where I get, no kidding, they changed the LRP, the logistics rally point. So all of a sudden I'm off my map and I'm going to a different terrain feature, which we can't name now because the names were kind of politically incorrect, that they call it the National Training Center. And I'm up there and I'm on the wrong mountain and nobody's going to get chow. Nobody's going to get resupply ammo. We're going to fail the mission, because of me. Right. And he was right. That company commander was right. You're going to fail. You're not trained for this yet. And I think that's the thing in life. We're not trained for everything. We can't be trained for everything. There's going to be failures and we just have to accept that that's going to happen. Right. And then we have to get over that. And I love from the Army Strong commercial. It's not just the strength to get over the obstacle. It's the strength to get over ourselves, to get over our own egos. Feedback is a gift. And if it hurts, it's even better.
Where can they get the book?
Where can they get the book? Amazon. Or if you just want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to send you a signed copy. john.barry@barrylaw.com.
John Barry, veteran-led, CEO of Barry Law, author of Veteran-Led, which is coming out this Veterans Day.
Thank you for joining us today on Veteran Led, where we pursue our mission of promoting veteran leadership in business, strengthening the veteran community, and getting veterans all of the benefits that they earn. If you know a leader who should be on the Veteran Led podcast, report to our online community by searching @Veteran Led on your favorite social channels and posting in the comments. We want to hear how your military challenges prepared you to lead your industry or community, and we will let the world know. And of course, hit subscribe and join me next time on Veteran Led.